Hi, this is Nicole Johnson, and this is my fourth installment on Unable to Rise. I had to share with you something that popped up with me this evening or this morning, actually. Um, the thing that I wanted to go over is what if? What if everything that happened to you in your life, gosh, I got to turn off these notifications. What if everything that happens to you in your life, the good, and especially, what's the word I wanted to put in here? The good, especially, or specifically, the bad things that happened to you growing up and in your life. What if those things were for your highest good? What if? And maybe not for the highest good for you. There's some really shit show things that happened to me. And believe me, it wasn't fun. Being molested at 4 years old by my best friend's brother was not fun. But what if the good things, and especially or specifically the bad things that happen to us in our lives, happen to us for the highest good of ourselves or the highest good for all? What if? So I thought about that question, came to me as soon as I woke up. It's almost like the divine kind of speaks to me as soon as I wake up. And I kind of jotted down 15 things, terrible things that happened to me. Actually, 16 things that happened to me growing up. That what if they happened to me for my highest good or the highest good of everyone? All right, I'm going to go over the first thing. I'm Nicole Johnson. I am the creator of a podcast called Unable to Rise and a YouTube channel that I created, gosh, about 4 years ago. But consistency in life and the story that I told myself that I shouldn't have been born kept me from getting my message out. Recently, a lot of synchronicities have happened in my life, and I've changed that story. I'm not ashamed to be born. I normally wouldn't come on a live without makeup or getting ready. I literally just didn't. I needed to get this message out. So what if everything that happens to us in our life was for the highest good of us, for our spiritual growth in this lifetime, or the highest good of all? So the first what if that came to me this morning was what if being born into an unwanted home was a blessing for me or for the highest good of all? What if? I could do a whole podcast on that one sentence. But in a nutshell, um, my mom hooked up with my dad, and supposedly I was conceived on their honeymoon. And as soon as she was pregnant, my dad, he was broken. He had alcoholism and probably some mental health, I'm sure, issues. Took off or started beating her. I forget the whole story I heard, but he wasn't around, and I was a living, breathing example of the mistake she made by conceiving me. She tried to go back to her first husband, I found out later, and because she had another kid, he didn't want anything to do with her. But basically, I was raised into a home where I was loved. I was definitely loved because I was a cute little kid and made everybody laugh and smile, but I wasn't wanted. In fact, I was actually told at a very young age that if abortions were legal, I wouldn't be alive. Wow, imagine that. But in the same sentence, she would say that I was the best thing that happened from that marriage with my dad. So it's strange how both could be true, right? And I've often wondered when I was growing up, I would ask the universe, gosh, why was I born? Why was I born? Why was I born? I was ignored. Um, I had to raise myself. I was a latchkey kid from age 7. I remember cooking my own meals, pretending I was a waitress, just kind of having a life. And I wonder why that happened. And I wonder if it's so that I can tell my story and help other people that feel or believe that they were born into an unwanted home. That's just not true. We were wanted by divine. We chose to come here. We probably made a soul contract with our, whoever you want to call her, him, it, God, Jehovah, Allah, um, Buddha, uh, whoever you want to call the creator of your self and your life. Every single person that was born on this earth was born for a reason. Maybe not wanted by the physical appearance that gave birth to them, but definitely wanted on this planet for the highest good and the highest good of all. So, what if me being born into an unwanted home was actually a blessing? That's the question I'm proposing. The second, what if being ghosted by my dad after I was born was for the highest good for me? Now, obviously, growing up, it didn't feel that way. I would get dressed for visitations. I would be so excited because my siblings' dad would show up for their visitations, and they'd come back with all these stories, all these gadgets and things that they did or gave or whatever. And I would think, my dad's going to do that, and so I would get all dressed up and I would wear the prettiest dress and I would smile and try to be funny and happy and everything. And he would literally no show. Yeah, he would not show up. And it was devastating to 3, 4, 5, 6 year old. So at one point, my mom started having the visitations at my grandma's house, seeing, he wouldn't no show to her house, right? And so I would get all excited and I'm like, oh, for sure this time, he's going to come. And he didn't come. And my grandmother would have 1,000 excuses. Oh, he's a busy man. Oh, he has to work. Sadly, those excuses just made it worse. Like, money's more important than me. His to-do lists are more important than me. I was last on his list. But what if me being ghosted by my dad was for my highest good or the highest good of all of us? What if? Looking back on it now, they say children that are around alcoholics can become one. And I'm wondering if he did me a favor by not showing up, drunk, by me not seeing, him hit my mom or whatever the things I was told he used to do. So maybe by him ghosting me, maybe that actually was for my highest good or the highest good for all of us. What if, here's number 3, what if being raised by a narcissistic mom was for my highest good? Now, at the time growing up, I didn't know that she was a narcissist. I did some timeline therapy. I'm actually a certified NLP coach. And one of the exercises was there's a thing you have to read and you try to get your subconscious mind to remember an event that happened. I didn't even know it happened. Like, you don't remember, right? And then through this hypnotic speaking, you're able to almost find these little nuggets of goodness. Isn't that strange? It's a really bad thing that happened to me ended up being goodness. So I remember something came to me. I was 3 or 4, and I was just being a typical 3, 4 year old, probably, terrible twos or whatever. And feeling I have, because I don't actually remember it. It was just kind of a snapshot picture of a feeling that came up during this timeline integration. that my mom basically said, I'm your only parent that's left. You don't want to piss me off because then you'll go, you know, somewhere else. And I decided right then in that snapshot in time that I couldn't rock the boat, that I had to be perfect. I had to be quiet. I had to stay funny. I had to gauge the room and find out, you know, what the room needed to bring the energy up. And I basically became a masterful networker. I can, to this day, I can go to any wedding conference if I'm in peak state. I mean, there's times when I'm just tired and, I'm stuck in my story and, I'm not on task. But because of 53 years of survival techniques, it was a survival technique for me to make sure what that the people around me were happy. Otherwise, I internally thought I would die. I would be abandoned. I would be kicked out of the nest. So it taught me how to pick up on visual cues, how to almost sense the energy of the room or a person and be able to show up almost inauthentically sometimes, but show up in a way to wow them, get them to um, think that I'm the cat's meow. And it's done me quite well in life, actually, been able to do that. I could tell several stories on this one. I'll just give one sample. I was new in my career in Ridgecrest, a dead end town that later on you'll see that that was actually a blessing. And I wanted desperately to get out of that town, to get to a city. I'm not a small town girl. I don't care if Susie dated Johnny and then the next day dated Sam. Like, I honestly don't care. As long as Susie, Johnny, and Sam are happy, I don't want to talk about it. And that didn't really fit in well with the small town mentality. Everybody just wanted to chit chat and talk about each other. So what happened was I was volunteering at Toys for Tots events from my work, and the vice president of my company flew in from the East Coast. And I don't know where this came from, but I kind of sensed the room and I thought this was my opportunity to get out of this town. And I wowed him because I had organized this entire Toys for Tots thing. I think I even went on the radio and got a lot of people to come. And I just went right up to him. It was the strangest thing. I did not plan this. And I just said, "Hi, my name is Nicole Rodriguez." That was my name. "I have no children, no house, no husband." And his face was like, "What are you saying?" And and I said, "And can you please get me the hell out of Ridgecrest?" And I just smiled, and the whole room started laughing. And he was like, "Gosh, I wasn't sure where this was going at first." And I was like, "Yeah, me either," because it just kind of happened. But because I was able to kind of, with my mom, um, basically teaching me that I needed to make sure everybody around me was happy, I was able to set a really good first impression with this vice president of the company. I think it was called Veda or Veridian back in the day. And fast forward 6 months, he kind of laughed and said, "Well, I'll look into it." But they weren't going to do anything because I was a really good worker. Obviously, I related very well with the customer out at WISA, Weapon System Support Activity. I was a data manager, and they didn't want to move me. I graduated with my degree and got a job offer to go to Boeing. And 6 months later, I had turned in my letter of resignation to my boss, who was sitting right next to the vice president or whomever was remembered me from Toys for Tots. And he said, "Hey, remember that crazy girl that was like, hey, I'm not married, have no house, have no children. Can you get me the hell out of Ridgecrest?" He's like, "Yeah, I remember that girl." And she's like, "Well, she just gave me her resignation and she's going to go work for Boeing." And the vice president's like, "Oh no, we're not having that. We need to keep her. She has the charisma. She has the can do, get stuff done attitude that we need at this company." So they countered and they said, "We don't want you to go. we want to keep you. And I said, well, I have to get out of Ridgecrest. There's no way I'm spending another minute here. I just graduated with a bachelor's degree. I have 7 years experience, as a lead data manager, configuration manager. I got an upgrade when I graduated. I need to get out of here. And they literally, guys, opened the map of Rail, no joke, and said, or Veda ratings, we kept getting bought. Where do you want to go? I was like, are you kidding me? I get to pick where I go. You're not going to pick for me. And I had been to San Diego as a vacation right after high school. My dad died when I was 7, and he had left me some money when I was 18 in a trust fund. And I remember taking a friend. We went to SeaWorld, we went to the zoo. And I remember thinking when I was 18 that if I ever could move to San Diego, that's where I want to go. It's just kind of a seed. So, they had an office in San Diego. And I just said, San Diego's quite nice. How about that? You got it. So I asked for 5,000 more than what Boeing was offering me. I should have asked for 20. And I asked for a paid move package, and they gave me everything I wanted. So I had to wait, I think, 6 months because Veda was being purchased by Veridian, and I needed to wait there. And I wasn't happy about that, but it was in Seattle, and I got to keep my seniority, and I got to stay. So anyways, being raised by a narcissistic mom and learning early on how to gauge a room and how to show up in a way that would make people laugh and remember me was very beneficial for me long term in my career and in my friendships and even meeting my husband, to tell you the truth. All right. Number 4. What if having siblings that loved each other so much in our broken home that it actually brought us closer? It's hard for me to say. What if having siblings that loved each other so much that our broken home brought us closer and farther and then closer again? So I have a really unique relationship with my brother and my sister. They are technically half brothers and sisters, but we left my dad right after I was born, and then the no-show visitations, we didn't really see him that much. I remember once or twice meeting my dad. And but my brother and my sister were my full, I knew no different. They're my brother and my sister. And what if living in a broken home gave my siblings and I the benefit of relying on each other? We were both young. We were both, oysters, just coming into this world, trying to figure it out. And because my mom was a narcissist and gone a lot, she would work like all the time. And then she had her hobbies that she did outside of work. So my siblings and I relied on each other to raise each other. My sister would sing to me the Meow Meow song. My brother taught me how to read. I saw Jaws when I was 4 years old, and I frankly refused to shower because I was so afraid the shark would come up from the drain or whatever. And he would, obviously in underwear or bathing suits or whatever, he taught me how to shower because I wouldn't do it. And so what if living in this broken home brought made each other kind of raise ourselves? Now, was that the right way for siblings to raise each other? Probably not. But we didn't have our story already defined. We didn't have society tell us who we were or who we were not. And so we just kind of figured it out. And while, it was kind of tumultuous growing up in low income housing in San Pedro, and not having, sometimes food to eat. My mom always made sure we ate, but I would see sometimes she wouldn't. What if that environment made my brother and my sister and I raise each other? And what if that oyster shell of a new human being raising each other gave us unlimited and endless possibilities? I don't know. What if? That's the question. Number 5, what if being molested at 4 by my best friend's brother? Obviously, at the time, it was horrible. right? But what if that was for the highest good? For me, I don't know if I would say that. But what if it's for the highest good of all? What if? What if I'm here to tell the story how I overcame that? I didn't tell anybody I felt responsible for it, because that's how he definitely groomed me. It was a privilege to be allowed into his room. It was a privilege to hang out with the big kids. I think he was 16, 17. And after that happened, I just no longer went to my friend's house ever again, and felt dirty and felt like I created it, and um, told my mom what happened after my other friend told her mom what happened. My mom told me. I didn't have to go to court. Could have, but instead I just wrote a letter about what happened. And he did. This is 1974, so I don't really know what happened to him. He probably went to counseling. I don't know. But what if me being molested at 4 was for the highest good for me and the highest good for all? I don't know. I'm wrapping my brain around that one. Maybe I could help other people, that have been through something similar, kind of navigate through it. I never went to therapy. I should have. I'm in therapy now, and I was in therapy before, and I it it changed me sexually. It changed me spiritually, and it made me uh, smarter. You know what I mean? I couldn't get groomed by people after that, because I learned um, not to trust men, and not to be alone with them. So maybe it helped me from getting wrapped up in something worse. I don't want to placate it. Yes, I was molested. It happened once, and it never happened again after that. So maybe, just maybe, being molested at 4 was for the highest good for me. Later on, maybe it kept me from getting in trouble worse, and maybe it will help other people navigate through the feelings and the, gosh, speed bumps in life. Number 6, what if being forgotten at Disneyland? Oh my gosh, this is a horrible story. My mom took me to Disneyland. I was 7. We had just moved from San Pedro low income housing to Ridgecrest, a small town that I actually grew up in. And she brought a boyfriend who I think was actually married to Disneyland with us. He was a truck driver, is what I remember. And we were at the, where were we at? The parade. And for whatever reason, I let go of her hand, or I might have walked over to a tree, and they disappeared. They were gone. So I stood by that tree for a good hour, 2 hours. The last place I saw her, I thought, well, gosh, she's got to come back here. Never came back. After about an hour, here I am, 7 years old. I didn't know my phone number. I didn't know my address. My dad had just died. My mom was gone. Gone. So I checked myself into Lost and Found right around by the entrance, and thought for sure, that's where she would. I think I might have went to a worker and said, "Hey, I'm lost. What do I do?" And they told me where to go. So I go to Lost and Found, and there's a couple other kids there. And throughout the day, I think I was there 8 hours. It felt like 20. I might have been there 6. I don't know. Kids would come. Parents would come. Parents would be crying. Parents would be frantic. And every time, a parent would come, I would look and say, "Is that my mom? Is that mom?" And it wasn't. It wasn't. They felt so bad, the workers there. They brought Cinderella. I think they brought Tigger. They brought all these people to come and talk to me out. But I was a lot of times the only kid there. Gosh, still hurts. Um, but what if being stuck there for 7 hours was for the highest good for me? In hindsight now, it was, because right then I grew up. I knew I couldn't count on my mom if she came back. Of course, I went through all of the what ifs. I remember going to the front desk and saying, "Hey, what happens if my mom doesn't come? What time do you close? I was kind of figuring it out. Like, what happens if she doesn't come? And they said, well, we will call Child Protective Services. We will call the police. Um, you know, we would make sure you're safe. They kept telling me you'd be safe. But I had if she doesn't come, I don't know how to call my sister. I didn't know my phone number. I didn't know my address. So right then I grew up. I said, okay, next time I go anywhere, I'm going to come up with a action plan, where to meet if we get lost. I'm going to memorize my phone number. I'm going to memorize my address. And this will never happen to me. Well, about 6, 7 hours later, my mom comes strolling in, not frantic, not crying, not anything like all the other parents were. Oh, there you are. I thought I just ran into you. Found out later, her and her boyfriend went and had lunch at the Blue Bayou. Yeah, yeah. Like they were going to run into me in the Blue Bayou. I don't know if you know Disneyland, but it's really hard to get lunch there. You almost need to wait like 2 and 3 hours just to get a table. And then when you're there, I think the meals are like 50, $100 a piece. So you stretch it out. You stay as long as you can. So that, of course, I couldn't say anything to her. I just remember running and I was so mad, but I couldn't let her see it. And I had to kiss the narcissistic ass ring and tell her, Mommy, I was so worried. I didn't think you were going to come. And then, she told me, I will always come. I will always be there for you. And maybe I needed to hear that. I don't know. But it taught me at a really young age that I needed to take care of myself, that I couldn't rely on my parent to watch over me, that I was on my own. And maybe that was for the highest good for me at that time. My mom was broken mentally. She was deficient. I've talked to therapists now, and some of the things I say, they said she had borderline personality, which borderline, and then she had narcissistic personality, and the two are different. When the therapist said she was a borderline narcissist, I thought that meant she wasn't really. She was kind of on the cusp. But actually, no, it's two different diagnoses, and it's hard to diagnose somebody without talking to them, but just kind of the stories I would tell. So maybe I needed that 6 hours by myself to brainstorm and think about, what it is, how it is I can never let this happen to me again. Maybe that was for my highest good. Maybe it taught me, that maybe in a 7-year-old way, that she's not altogether there and that I needed to take care of myself. So I digress. Number 6. Number 7, what if not filling in at school and being kicked out by the cool club was for my highest good? What if? So we moved to Ridgecrest. I was 7. I was the cool kid from Los Angeles, Nicole Rodriguez, kind of a unique name in this small town. And I immediately made friends with the popular girls in my little school, Fowler School. And we, famous friends, we would carpool, we would have sleepovers. I learned to be what everybody needed me to be. So it was easy for me to fall in with the cool kids. But because I didn't really have a home structure that taught me boundaries and what to say and what not to say, sometimes I was an open book. And sometimes that's not good in middle school, to be an open book of things that you think about or dream about or wish about. And so the summer, I think it was summer of 7th grade, 5th, 6th, 7th grade. Yeah, 7th grade or 8th grade. I was a cheerleader and with them, and they went to cheerleading camp. And for whatever reason, my mom said she couldn't afford it. She could have. She honestly could have, but I wasn't a priority, so I didn't get to go. And we didn't have a lot of money, so a lot of the clothes I wore were handmade. She would make me beautiful outfits, and it was in the 80s, and so you could wear like mini skirts and Laura Ingalls Little House on the Prairie skirts. You could kind of mix things up, and you would still be accepted. But I didn't go to this cheerleading camp. All my friends did. I was odd man out. So guess what happened? I became the topic. I became the fodder of their trip. Not to do anything stupid, but I would in the bathroom, we all go to the bathroom together. I would kiss myself in the mirror and I would say, "You're beautiful, you're amazing, have a great day." And that, I think my mom actually taught me that. And, I think that made them think that I was stuck up. So, anyways, the day before eighth grade, we were supposed to carpool. They literally called me, and I had other friends over, I forget who, and they said, "Hey, we don't want you hanging out with us next year." I was like, "What?" And I couldn't say anything because I had other friends right in front of me. Like, I couldn't even cry. I couldn't say why. I couldn't do anything. I just had to say, "Wow, okay, thanks for letting me know." I said, "Are we still gonna carpool? Like what?" And oh yeah, we'll still carpool, but we're not gonna, you can't hang out with us. You can't sit at the cool bench. We're really specific. You can't sit with us at lunch. You just basically, we don't want to be your friend anymore." And I was like, "All right, thanks for letting me know." Had to be totally cool in front of these other friends. And then of course I was devastated. I found out later in therapy that that's similar to in the Neanderthal days, especially when the peer group in Neanderthal days and in middle school are so important. That's your identity. That's who you are. It's almost like survival. If you could die, right? In Neanderthal days, if they kick you out of the cave, you starve to death. Um, so that literally happened to me. And Wendy, Anna, Tracy, thank you for the lesson. Um, and God, I'm sorry, I digress. So I told my mom about it. I was embarrassed. I think, oh, I remember. We were waiting for school. My mom wouldn't go to work. She said, "I'm not leaving until I know you have a ride." I said, "Well, they're going to come. Just go, just go." My mom's like, "No." So they never showed up. And then as we're driving to school, that's when I told my mom what they said, that they said we would still carpool, but that I wasn't allowed to hang out with them. And so my mom gave me some actual really sound advice that day. She said, "Life is like a play or a stage. It's up to you what character you bring to the stage." So she says, I could go to school and I could act like, "Oh, please be my friend. Please be my friend. Why did you do that?" Or I could go to school and I could just wave at them and be like, "Hey, how's it going?" And then go right to my other group. That's the other good news of being raised in a small town is I had a lot of friends. And because I was in the popular group, I got to the A group, the B, C, D, E, F, and G group thought I was cool. So all I did was just go to another group of friends and said, "Hey, these girls aren't my cup of tea anymore. Do you mind if I'm your friend?" And instantly I had a whole new set of friends, and instantly I pretended like everything was okay. Yeah, so what if not fitting in at school and being literally kicked out of the cool club the day before eighth grade? Again, thank you, Wendy, Anna, and Tracy. What if that was for my highest good and the highest good of all? What if hanging out with them would have turned me into, back then there was the Valley Girls and Gag Me with the Spoon and all that. And what if I wouldn't have had the opportunity to make meaningful and lasting relationship with the B, C, D, F, and G groups? Maybe in hindsight, it was a good thing. What if, oh, what's this? Watching friends spiral into drugs. Oh, what if seeing a few of my friends from the B, C, D, E, F, and G group spiral into drugs was for my highest good and the highest good of all? Ridgecrest, I didn't know at the time, was the speed capital of the world, they said. I don't know if it's true or not. There was a lot of old abandoned mines that happened that were in the hills, and people would go there and make, I guess, meth and sell it. I My mom was worried about my siblings, and so she had me watch a lot of documentaries of the results of long-term drug abuse. And I never wanted to ruin my brain or my face or my body or my teeth, by doing that. And so I never got involved in that part of Ridgecrest. Yeah, sure, I went to parties. Yeah, sure, it was offered, but I my saying was tweak or suck. So I never really wanted to be a part of that. And what if, sadly, seeing some of my friends spiral into the drain of meth was for my highest good? What if? I feel bad, but what if? That's the whole question of this podcast, of this YouTube channel, is what if? What if not fitting in with water cooler talk at work, but soaring into management was for my highest good? So right out of high school, I applied for a position. I was a waitress, and I used to wait on this gentleman all the time, Chris Kowalix. Thank you, Chris, if you're listening to this. Thank you for my start. He was telling me, I was actually talking to him. I'm kind of a chatty Cathy. That's kind of how I did good with tips, is I just made my customers my friends. And I was chatting with him about how it would really be nice to have a job where I didn't have to work weekends, excuse me, or I wouldn't have to work Christmas and holidays and just like have a 9 to 5. So he remembered me and he came in and he would always ask for my table. And he said, "Hey, my company's hiring a part-time receptionist. You would be perfect for it. It's just this, 4-month thing. You could see if you like the office job and kind of get your feet wet. And then, it's only a 4-month thing. And then you can go back to waitressing." So I thought, yeah, that'd be kind of cool. It's a huge cut and pay because I was making like $80 a day waitressing. And then I found actually my offer letter. I think I was making $6.25 an hour doing this database thing, but I excelled. I loved being at a computer. They actually bought me a little tiny Macintosh. I remember it was just a little thing, and they ordered it before it was DOS Matrix, where you had to put in these floppy drives and click like /:: to get DOS to work. But I remember reading this Macintosh computer book before it arrived, and I had to create a foreign military sales database click button thing on the software that each country was afforded based upon Congress releasing whatever. But it was just really fun. It was just a good time. And I got the database done in like half the time. I guess he was afforded 4 months of funding. And because I was so eager and it interested me, it really did. It was exciting. I got to kind of orchestrate the layout of it and the buttons and the colors and the pictures. And it was really fun. I got it done in half the time and he still had 2 months of funding. So he put me out with China Lake with the weapon system support activity, and I assisted the data manager. And I didn't know what I was doing. I went to a party, right? I was 18. I went to a adult party. I made a complete ass of myself. Then became, the talk of the the people there, and I never really fit in with them after that. There was actually a group of ladies. Lonnie was one of them. I can't think of the others. They had a annual women's breakfast, and they purposely wouldn't post flyers so that I wouldn't come. Isn't that weird? Like I found out later, years later, a new director came and he's like, "Why aren't you guys posting flyers?" And they're like, "Because we don't want to invite." I'm sure it wasn't just me. I'm sure there was other girls that they didn't approve of. They didn't want just everybody to come. And that dude's like, "Yeah, no, that's not happening on my watch. Invite everybody." And then when I saw the flyers, like the 9th annual women's breakfast, I was like, shit, I've been here 7 years. I was never invited. So I just like, I'm going to go. I'm going to go. I'm going to go. And then I no showed. So I don't know. I just wonder if me not fitting in with the water cooler talk made me succeed because I didn't get caught up in the office politics. I didn't care if Susie did Joe and Joe did Susie. And I just was I guess above that, or not included. Let's just say not included. And then that got me to focus on working really hard. And then I became not only the assistant data manager, I became the lead data manager. And then because of my feeling stupid for making an ass of myself at that first party. Nothing stupid. I just had too much to drink and kissed this guy. And then the really nice people made sure I got home. And then, and that was it. That was basically what I did. But, you don't want to do that and kiss a guy. And then, it's not a good way to make a first impression. So, but that just kind of, I think I was so afraid of being kicked out. This is what came up in therapy. I was so afraid of being kicked out of the cool club again that I did it for myself. Isn't that weird? Kind of like self-fulfilling prophecy. You're so afraid of not fitting in that you end up doing exactly what it needed to be done to not fit in. Anyways, what if number 10, maybe I'll stop here because it's already getting to 40 minutes and I'll do the other 7 on another recording. What if having to date 10, what if for my highest good, I needed to date 10 frogs to meet my prince? Yeah, what if? I had some doozers of relationships. My first one was, I don't want to say their name. I can think of a name that starts with the J. John. Let's just say his name was John. I met him when I was 14. He was 16. It was a great guy. He worshipped me. But he was also, I didn't know at the time because I told you tweakers suck. He might have been the speed dealer of the town I was in. I didn't know at the time. But I noticed that he had a lot of people that came and went, and he stopped going to high school towards the end. And yeah. What if seeing that helped me not to become that? What if I needed that? He used to hit me one time. I used to try to get him to go to school. I would go to his house and wake him up because he was flunking out of high school. And I think I actually broke up with him. I think I was off and on, off and on. And I woke him up and he got so mad and I could tell his face just looked contorted. And he was just like, stop it. And he headbutted me. I got this big bruise. And I was like, look what your son did. And I had to have, my mom was in the theater. She was working in, she did on the side Clota and Randsburg Players, I guess, Randsburg Players. I had to have this guy, Reno, thank you, Reno, if you're watching, help me figure out how to put green and blue under my eyes because the thing just drained and it was horrible. And what if I needed that so that I knew, not to get wrapped up into drugs and to have, a better life. And there's 9 other guys that I dated that each one taught me something. Each one taught me what I would and would not put up with. I had one guy, let's see, what's a name that starts with the R that's not really his name? Ralph. I dated this guy named Ralph from my time I was 19 till I was 21. All my relationship lasted around 3 years. It's so weird. Either after 3 years, I would break up with them, or after 3 years, they would break up with me. Now, there was one, what's the name that starts with the T? That's not Thomas. One, Thomas, we only dated a couple years, but that was a big lesson. I digress. Back to Ralph. I dated Ralph, and he was the cutest guy of Ridgecrest. Immediately by dating him, my status went up. He had a plane, he had a boat, he was a windsurfer, he went skiing. I learned so much from dating him. And we dated 3 months, literally just dated before anything got sexual. I was introduced to sexuality at a young age. So maybe sometimes I would jump into it sooner than later to get them to love me, I guess. Also, I had, some daddy issues from my dad abandoning me, really. And I didn't really know what it was felt like to be loved by a man. So I sought attention from men inappropriately, but I always stayed with them. I was really cognizant of what people thought of me. So I never had one night stands. I would whomever I was with, they were my boyfriend for 3 years. So, anyways, I was dating Ralph. He was a great guy, but everything was about him. I remember one time my grandmother, she was really sick and she wanted to meet Ralph. Um, she was in Bakersfield. We were in Ridgecrest. It was like a 2-hour drive. She wanted to meet him and she was really sick. And I said, "Hey, Ralph, let's go to Bakersfield. Let's meet, my grandmother." And I would everywhere with him. I would go in the car. We would drive to Visalia and get his plane. I was afraid of heights and we would take his plane and do touch and goes, but I would do it just to be with him. And I was deathly afraid of heights, and we'd have to stall the engine and get the engine to start again. But I had to just pretend like everything's cool. Oh yeah, I'm your co-pilot. You know what I mean? And I would do everything for him. We would go skiing at Mammoth, and I was so afraid of heights, guys. And I don't know if you know, but in the 80s, the ski lift was just there, and all there was a little bar. You didn't have like, I don't even know what's still there, but it was scary. And I would go up and I would ski the Hansel and Gretel slopes and they would go ski the double diamonds. And then I was lonely, by lunchtime. And so by lunchtime, I would just go with them. I didn't have any freaking clue skiing down double diamonds, but I did it. I would just go sideways and sideways and sideways and sideways. And I was so scared. But I would do this for Ralph because I knew at the end of the night, we would have a hotel, we would go out to dinner, and we would go in the jacuzzi. And then I could sit next to him and he would hold my hand. And then I would feel loved and I would feel part of it. And so I would do so much for him. And it was never, ever reciprocated. So I digress. My grandmother was sick. She wanted to meet him. And I said, "Hey, Ralph, let's go to Bakersfield to see my my grandma." You know what he told me? He said, "What if it's windy that day?" And I'm like, "Okay, we'll be in a car. It's not like we're in the, little house in the prairie minivan with a horse drawn carriage. We're going to be fine." "What do you mean if it's windy that day?" He's like, "Well, what if I would want to go windsurfing instead?" I should have dumped him right then. I should have said, "Well, what if your girlfriend needed you and you need to come?" But I didn't. I didn't want to rock the boat. I didn't want to give up the status at work because everybody knew him at work. He was the catch of really Wissa, I thought. He's really attractive too, but he was an asshole, a narcissistic asshole. And he did me the biggest favor by doing that to me. And then later he did some other stupid stuff. I don't even want to go into it, but just very selfish and demeaning, and taught me that I will never put up with somebody that didn't put me as number one. So, anyways, what if having to date 10 frogs, and they were frogs, and Ralph had a lot of warts, and Joshua, whoever starts with the J, the first guy, he had a lot of warts. But every person taught me what I wanted in a mate, actually. I'll have to do a whole nother YouTube on that. Picking your partner in life, or your husband or your spouse, whether it be a girl or a boy, I don't honestly care who it is one of the biggest, most important decisions you can make your entire life. Because who you hang out with is who you become. So if I had married, um, who started with the J, Jason, if I probably would be a speed dealer. If I had married Ralph, I would probably have 3 kids and be miserable in Ridgecrest, doing everything he wanted and never having the life that I wanted or I imagined for myself. So, what if having to date 10 frogs to meet my prince was a blessing? When I finally met my husband now, I remember I was 27 and I was in Ridgecrest, and I was waiting for Viridian to be purchased by Veda so that I could move to San Diego. I had like 6 months to do, and I knew I was a lame duck. I didn't really have to work really hard at work. I mean, I had to do my configuration management stuff. We were putting together an electronic document management system. I didn't have to come up with any new stuff. I just kind of do the 9 to 5 stuff. And I put together a list of things that I wanted in a partner, and that I was, because I was going to change to a new town. I could, wipe the slate clear. Nobody's going to know the stupid thing I did at the party. Big deal. I got too drunk and I kissed a guy. In the big scheme of things, it wasn't that big of a deal. But at the time, I was mortified. But I could kind of like start over and go to a whole new town and basically wipe the slate clean. So I decided to make a list of the must-haves in a relationship. And I really wish I could find that list. I know it somewhere. The husband that I have now has 99.9% of every one of those qualities, even down to the hair color. I wanted dark eyes or dark hair, blue eyes. We won't go into the other physical aspects that I wrote down, but he has them. I wanted someone with goals. I wanted someone that would be a great father, because I never had an example of what a father could be. And he hits that to the nail. I wanted someone that made me a priority. He does that, guys. We've been together since 1999, and right now it's 2023. I am so blessed to have found my husband, Matt Johnson. He has blessed me with a beautiful home, a beautiful backing. He has my back, even when I'm wrong. And I have been wrong. Oh my gosh. There was one time, my poor friend, she was dating this loser, and I don't know if I'm psychic or what, but I can pick up if people are good or not good when it comes to my friends and their relationship. Obviously not with my own self, because I did date a few really disgusting frogs with a lot of warts, but with my friends, I definitely could help them navigate. And she was dating this guy that treated her like shit on a shingle, if I can say that. And she was moving to another state within California. And it was a big going away party for her at this restaurant. Poor thing. And she was so excited. She had rented a hotel. They lived in different parts of town. And so she had rented a hotel, and she was going to see him that night. And I think she was leaving for her new state, the next day. And so she had this party at this restaurant, and we all thought, he was going to be there. He freaking no-showed. Seriously. And I was like, trying to be cool, trying to be like, oh, well, maybe, he had to work. He was a hockey coach or basketball coach. I don't know. And I said, well, maybe, something happened with the kids. You never know what happened, trying to be, not to ruin her day. Right. And Matt and I just started dating. And finally he showed up. We were all at dinner. We had all been drinking heavily. Matt and I had a cab driver that would pick us up. Bruce. I love Bruce. And we would pay him double whatever was on the meter. It was kind of like Uber. Why didn't we come up with it? And we would just call Bruce, and he would know where to get us, and we had a ride, and everything was fine. So it was a night we were going to go out and have some fun. So I don't know what happened to me. Sometimes my mouth just goes into autopilot, and I don't know if it's right or wrong. At the time, I was mortified what I did, but in hindsight, I was right on target. So this jerk shows up. I don't even remember his name. Let's call him Ralph, because when I think about his ugly face, that's kind of what I want to do. Anyways, he brought his friend. I'm pretty sure he was closeted thing, which is no big deal. Not a big deal. But don't pretend that you're one way and lead my friend on and think that you're gonna, make her your partner, and while you're really a closeted homosexual, like just be yourself, right? So he showed up and he was all like, oh really, because we had been drinking and obviously they probably weren't. And so I just with this really condescending this attitude, this feeling, and I just wanted to slap him. I did. And then he came for a little bit, and then he told her, she's like, well, okay, well, I got the hotel room, I'm excited to da da. He's like, oh no, I'm not staying the night. I'm going to go hang out with so and so. And he was just, I saw her just like crushed, like that. She had planned her whole day around this time. I think she had bought in a crazy outfit and maybe might have put flowers out. I don't know what this poor girl did, but oh my God, I was so mad. I stood up in the middle of this restaurant. I don't know where it came from. And I just called him, you're a dickless wonder. And I'm so glad she's leaving this town. She's going to find someone 1,000 times better than you. And of course, I wouldn't stop. Um, I just kept going and going and going. And then he got up, right? Because I was kind of making a scene at this table. And of course, all her friends were just like gobstruck. They're just like, what is she saying? And then my boyfriend at the time, Matt, I was just like, hey, calm down, calm down. And I was pissed. I'm like, gosh darn it, no, nobody treats my girl like this. And then so when he was leaving, I remember yelling, dickless, dickless wonder, go have fun with your boyfriend. And so then obviously he left. She's crying. Everybody at the table's like, what in the frick just happened? And then I think my boyfriend could sense at the time that, we needed to leave. And so we threw out like 60, $100 cash. And then, hey, sorry, Melon, what was her name? I'm going to give her a different name. Marjorie. Sorry, Marjorie, for that. I don't know where that came from, but something needed to be said. And I'm sorry, but we're going to leave. And so we left, and then we called Bruce, and they were waiting for Bruce to come. And then, oh, it was so embarrassing. And then in the morning, I was like, what did I do? But what if that was for her highest good and the highest good for all? Honestly, she ended up marrying this fool, and he ruined her entire life. So I was right. But I digress. I just wanted to say, what if everything that happens to you in your life, the good and especially or specifically the bad, happen to you for your highest good or for the highest good of all? So, for my 5th YouTube installment and my first podcast, if I could figure out how to get the audio over to a podcast, Callcast software, I challenge you. I challenge you to sit back today, right now. Don't wait. Don't say, oh, I'll do it later. Write down maybe the 10 things that looking back at were horrible, horrible, horrible. Like being left at Disneyland for 7 hours. That's horrible. My dad not showing up to visitation. Horrible. Me making a complete ass of myself at that first party in China Lake. Me not fitting in with the Girl Scout group and being kicked out the day before 8th grade. Uh, Me being raised by a narcissistic mom and my siblings and I just having to figure it out. Me being molested at 4. Me watching my friends spiral down, the sink of drug and alcoholism. What if me, what if I had to date Ralph and Jason and have what I thought at the time debilitating heartbreak, right? But what if all of that had to happen for me to meet and to orchestrate the man of my dreams? What if? So that's the challenge I have. Write down 10 things that happened to you in your life that you thought at the time were the worst things ever, and try to find the silver lining. If not for you, like, I think being born into an unwanted home, I don't think that was a, a good thing for me, Well, it did teach me how to be a professional people pleaser, and it did teach me how to stand on my own feet. And I am quite strong. So maybe it was for me. Okay, maybe being molested at 4. Let's go to that one. Maybe being molested at 4 wasn't for the best, highest good for me. But what if I can tell that story and I help a 4, 5, 6 year old, I help a mom see the warning signs and I keep that 4, 5, 6 year olds from being molested. Maybe that happened to me for the highest good of all. What if? And plus, why sit in misery? I mean, if something really bad happened to you growing up, why live in it? Why not look for the silver lining? All right, we're at an hour, so I'm going to end this. I thank you. And as I like to say, we are enabled to rise. All we have to do is stand. Thank you. Nicole Johnson. Follow me on my podcast, Enabled to Rise. My website will be up soon, Enabled to Rise. I love you all. Thanks for listening.